Salt and Sanctuary is a fast-paced 2D Souls-like, albeit also leaning on the platforming and exploration elements that are more reminiscent of Metroidvanias, with its own unique iterations to the formula. For one thing, whilst character generation has the standard starting appearance, class, and some item choice, it also grants the player to enable certain difficulty modifiers if they're in need of a more challenging, see painful, experience. From there, players are thrust into the game proper without any long-winded tutorials or cutscenes, and right into the middle of getting raided by pirates. Even at the start, combat is a slick, satisfying process, with blocking, dodging, parrying, and a robust combo system, in tandem with various weapon and magic types, that make every fight intense, with victory or defeat being squarely placed on the skill and ability of the player. The tutorial even sneaks in a peek at the difficulty curve involved in the game's epic boss battles, with an especially tough optional boss. I'm looking at you, Deep. A fact that is only magnified by the extreme responsiveness and simple-to-grasp controls of the game. Though, admittedly, even the responsiveness of the controls will likely not be enough to spare you from being killed a countless number of times via traps, deadfalls, and sadistically placed enemies about the map, as the game takes a great amount of pride in its Metroidvania heritage, putting your platforming skills to the test. Still, getting past those parts are a reward in and of themselves, though the loot scattered about certainly helps. And the game does provide a number of new ways to traverse the map as it progresses, making some of the platforming segments earlier on more forgiving, and then adding even more tricky ones later to compensate. That, and also a boss fight that incorporates platforming into its mechanics. Fuck yourself, Tree of Men. Just go fuck yourself. And if that isn't enough to plant you firmly in the ground, Salt also possesses an interesting form of dynamic difficulty in its wounding and fatigue systems. Namely, when a player takes health damage, their maximum health is gradually reduced, meaning that even if you heal, you're still that much closer to dying, which can be especially nail-biting in a tense boss fight. And yes, fatigue is basically the same thing, but more of a, hey, I'm running and jumping, and now I'm a bit tired and my max stamina is a little lower, and yay, I can't dodge roll as much. Yay. Fuck my life. Still, even though the game does at times seem devoted to murdering unwary players, it's fairly forgiving in its placement of the namesake sanctuaries, which serve as the game's checkpoints and hubs. It's here that players can save, talk to friendly supporting NPCs, and even join a creed. Salt's unique take on the Souls Covenant system. Provided they haven't done anything that'd possibly enrage the faction that's currently made that sanctuary its home. 'Cause, yeah, that happens. Speaking of namesakes, Salt is the game's EXP, which players can use to either upgrade, transform their gear via its forging and alchemy systems respectively, or use it to level up. And the leveling system is something this game does very well, as players are granted the ability to advance in level for the gains in defense and health, and storable skill points. Yes, skill items. These are sellable. Why are these sellable? Still, it helps give players a bit more flexibility in planning out the way they want to build their character, especially since certain skill nodes in the leveling tree also double as proficiencies with certain weapons. Do I want access to a better sword, more magic, maybe a new health potion or few? Hell, there's even items hidden around the island that allow you to refund a skill point, as long as it's not been spent on a skill node, making it pretty experiment-friendly for trying new builds. Also, if you've got a masochistic streak, or a chronic need to ram yourself face first against the hardest challenges a game can offer, this game offers a New Game Plus mode. Except, not just one, no. Salt continues to escalate already to New Game Plus 7 for those compulsive levelers or challenge seekers in the audience. By this point, you'll likely have memorized the layout of the game, even despite the lack of an in-game map. Woo. Just don't try and find anything in your inventory at this point, because unless you've been compulsively selling everything, it's likely as labyrinthine as a David Bowie movie. Nailed it. Which definitely adds a certain degree of replayability, especially in tandem with the game's co-op mode, which enables a savvy player to plunge an unsuspecting, newly rolled friend into the darkest depths of what the game has to offer. Provided you have the NPC needed to summon a friend and haven't killed them. Sadly, the game only supports couch co-op, so you're pretty likely to earn yourself a punch in the shoulder if you're too much of a jerk, and you're not going to be invading anyone anytime soon. Though, the couch co-op only thing, we do have a workaround, and you can check the instructions for that nifty little multiplayer hack if you look in the description below. Story and lore-wise, there's a lot to love about Saltborn Sanctuary. The main plot thread is you're a dude that sent off to escort a princess to an arranged marriage. Then marauders attack and die like bitches. So then Cthulhu's third cousin attacks, or is already attacking? Whichever. And then the ship scuttles either way, so somehow in your maybe full play, you avoid drowning, only to wake up on a mysterious island with no princess in sight. And so begins your epic quest to find your princess, maybe she's in another castle, and try and find a way off the island, though I found myself more interested in trying to discover the secret of the island. Presentation-wise, the story's never really forced down your throat, with only a brief intro and ending cutscene. The majority of the game's narratives instead being told through the idle banter of the NPCs, item descriptions, the stories found in the skill tree, on every single node, it's great, and the various locations and enemy descriptions. It's a beautiful yet tragic world the players find themselves in, and one which I couldn't help but find myself scouring through again and again in order to piece together more of the world's lore. On the front of all things musical, this game's soundtrack is quite solid, relying on a gorgeous series of orchestrals which essentially characterize the areas they tend to play in, frequently signaling to a player whether they're safe or in immense danger even before they're fully granted a visual cue. Sanctuaries are heralded by a mellow yet melancholy theme that accompanies the player as long as they reside within the relative safety of the walls. That said, once the player steps outside, they'll often find themselves stalked by the subtle buildup of guitar riffs as they venture into the, at first, unknown innards of the island, the tunes often serving to provide an excellent sense of tension, which then seek perfectly into the bombastic boss themes, which tend to easily take center stage and let the players know just how far they've strayed into the territory of one of the bosses. Plus, the themes for the final section of the game is just amazing. Honestly, I just wish there were more tunes in the game, given how good those already present were. The art in Saltborn Sanctuary is pretty iconic of Ska Studios' other works, like Dishwasher and Charlie Murder. You can even make yourself look like a character that ought to belong in one of those games. That said, whereas those titles are urban, Salt bears a more medieval aesthetic, the island showcasing a gorgeous, but ultimately morbid, collection of environments ranging from mist-drenched beaches to crumbling castles, foreboding forests, and dank grottos. I got to use the word grotto here, I'm so happy. Likewise, the enemy design is a macabre collection of cruel corpses and carnivorous creatures with a distinct horror theme to their appearances. One that is only amplified by the brutality of the game, as the visceral nature of combat is often accompanied by sprays of gore, which stain the already blood-soaked background and definitely pop out against the sort of desaturated color scheme. At the end of the day, Saltborn Sanctuary is amongst those games nearest and dearest to my heart, and is actually wholly responsible for my interest into the Souls-like genre as a whole. Ska Studios' two-person team provided me with a well-polished, challenging, and extremely addictive collision of platforming, exploration, and methodical combat which I found myself returning to again and again, with countless different builds and setups. They've also been pretty on point about patching the game and listening to player feedback to ensure that it's an enjoyable experience, which is pretty chill with me. So basically, if you're like me and dig 2D games, Metroidvanias, Souls-likes, or things that have that sort of medieval vibe, and co-op/couch co-op games, well, definitely give this game a look-see. Seriously though, just don't hate on me when the Deep kills you, or the Witch of the Lake, or Hagar, or the Tree of Men, or the rest of them.